Now we're on. Yeah. Hello. My name is Shanae. A deep thank you to all of you who choose to tune in each month for these conversations. Bhavani and I are deeply grateful that you spend your time and your energy in this way. I'm here once again with Bhavani Maki for another conversation from the heart. I'm deeply grateful and honored that these keep going and that I have more questions. Thank you for being here, Bhavani.
Thank you. And I'm really appreciative too. I know it's like you have to scramble and get childcare. And yeah, you have questions. I don't know that I have answers, but I have questions too. And that's fun.
Well, it's exciting for me that the feedback that we're getting from this podcast is overwhelmingly positive. I have students of mine, often one in particular, she writes me handmade cards, and she always says how much she deeply appreciates these conversations, and I enjoy them, and so it seems like other people do too. So I'm grateful.
That's awesome.
Today, I want to talk about the saying yoga on the mat and yoga off the mat. So I understand the difference and the necessity between formal times of practice, and as of you often say, like don't try to fit your life into yoga, but let yoga unfold in your life. And often when I hear these words, let's practice yoga on the mat and yoga off the mat, I sense that there's an underlying disconnect somehow, that real yoga means one thing. And then in your daily life or in my daily life, I'm not actually doing yoga unless it looks a certain way. I'd love to get your thoughts and your perspective on this.
Well, you and I know in the beginning, right? It's like you're being introduced to this whole new way of exploring self. It's got so much history. You want to be a part of it. Something sparked within you. And so, of course, being in community and having a teacher who can transmit um, the the sentiment, the ethos, the attitudes that we cultivate is really important. And then hopefully that starts to trickle into our daily world. I mean, as I'm saying this, I'm just flashing back to those students who wouldn't stick around for Shavasana or couldn't lay still. And, really, if we're going to understand what yoga is, it's not Trikonasana, it's not Adho Mukha Svanasana. There's books written about this, Mark Singleton, that these postures that we know as yoga are relatively contemporary. When we're talking about the scope of yoga, which is thousands of years, we're talking about what we consider to be yoga, contemporary yoga, is maybe 100 years, and it actually was part of the diaspora from Europe. So this is why we love the Yoga Sutra, because 196 Sutra, it's the map of human potential. It's the everybody has the impulse to want to learn, to want to know more about themselves, but not everybody follows it.
Mhm.
And sometimes we'll have that impulse, and sometimes we'll, kind of get close within the vicinity. And then we might get caught in a spiral or um, in a physical methodology for years and kind of forget, like, oh, that's just one layer. As my husband Ray says, that's just the seat of yoga. You're just having a chair, you're just having a seat. It's an internal experience. And when I studied with Patabi Joyce, he would often say, yoga is an internal practice, the rest is just a circus. So fortunately, we have these Yoga Sutra, which are very precise, poignant, and explicit. 196 Sutra, maybe 198, 197. Three address asana, and they don't tell you where your kneecap goes. They don't tell you anything about that. They speak about, oh, wow, this is great. Like, this is new words for me. And I knew it, but I hadn't like been able to articulate it. It's all about interoception and proprioception. Okay. So, Sthira Sukhamasana is this place where you're settled, but you're not in lethargy because we're moving beings. That's what we do. And we need to be able to pivot. I mean, how often do you have to pivot just like trying to walk across the living room with a little, right? You know, all of the things you have to do, all of the things, the cross currents of people, the rhythms of others, the joys, the, you know, whatever it is, the spilled milk. So we need to be able to shift in motion without having anxiety, without having stress or strain. And then the next sutra speaks about this interoception, which is to like feel yourself as supported by something bigger and to merge yourself with it. Then we go into Tato Dvadvan Abhigataha 248, which speaks about we live in a magnetic field. And this is the image of Patanjali, where he is coiled in his form as Adishesha, his pre-human incarnation. And it's like an axis that's generating current. That's what we live in. The world is a swirling, you know, wonderful, it's our oyster and it's swirling in the ocean. And we need to be able to pivot. So, how can we become multifaceted and dynamic in any moment? Like, oh, I'm going to sit down and do some nadi shodhana, some pranayama. Oh, this needs to happen now. This is interrupting my high and holy sacred practice. And I just love that Tolstoy book, The Three Questions, where it's
Mm.
like, oh my God, what are they? I know them in my heart, but it's um, like, what's the most important thing to do to help the one you're with? Um, you know, when should you do it? Now, where? Right here. So it's like really, it's a it's a life, it's a life of service. People need to get that. Okay. Like, yes, you're serving yourself, but you're also serving others. And how we can, so for me, yoga is so much more about checking in with myself. It's in those, often those little stolen moments. Sometimes I have the luxury, you know, for more time, not lately. I used to have lots of that luxury and I'm looking forward to it again. But of really coming to my senses, feeling myself in space. And, you know, as you know, and the listeners who've been, you know, listening, the less cueing and the less choreography we can do, the better, because it becomes dissociative. So I tell you what I've been really loving lately is pendiculation.
What's that?
So pendiculation, every cat does it, every dog does it, every kid does it.
Mm.
We do it, except we've come to this place where we become so trained that we have kind of cut off our primal instincts of sensation. But it's when you just want to, so actually I have to laugh because like I would say, don't yawn. That was part of the tradition. Yawning is actually great. So now it's like, oh my God, scratch that, yawn, reach, close your hands, you know, move around. And what's happening is like your whole body is getting a reset. And of course, your body is your physiology, which changes your psychology. It's getting a reset from whatever like sedentary thing or action or activity you were doing. Maybe the activity wasn't sedentary, but it was a certain focus. And it literally resets like the piezoelectric current in your body. I know, isn't it feel so good to pick
So good.
like, why isn't this yoga? Who said? Who said? Who do
Oh,
you think you are? Who are you kidding? So, really taking those moments to settle in. I tell you, my favorite time to do pranayama now is when I go to bed and I spend some time and I just feel my vertebra floating and I feel my spine lengthening and uncoiling and feeling recoil, feeling into my weight. Just getting really curious and tuning into sensation. And the funny thing is, I mentioned this yesterday in the sutra class because we're moving out of our old house and into our new one. All these old photographs are turning up, and I'm young and I'm sinewy and I'm lithe. And, I mean, I look that way on the outside, but I just see so much bullshit in my body. It's like I
mm,
choreographed so well. I have this
mm,
picture of me doing Durvasasana. It's an impressive pose. And I'm like looking up in my third eye. And I'm just like, it's just funny to me. I mean, I'm glad I did it. But, on the outside, I looked good.
mm.
And it's so funny because when Nico, my son, see these pictures, he's like, I think you look so much better now. I'm
Oh,
wrinkly, I'm gray, my ass is shifted, and things like that. So, like, the consensus probably wouldn't say that, but I am more comfortable
mm,
in myself.
mm,
Now, do you think that, like, these, you know, jungle people who lived in the wild, in the forest, they were like, hey, does this look good? Were they looking at their reflection, or was it more about feeling good in their
mm,
bodies and paying attention to their environment? But we all have to start somewhere, right? And for a lot of people, this is a big education, is just even having a sense of where you are in space.
mhm.
Or, no time was wasted in connecting with my big toe. It was rudimentary.
Yeah.
But, really yoga, and I'm going to pull from we love Martine Prechtel, he's so eloquent. It's really about coming out of this spiritual amnesia where
Mm,
we become so overly domesticated that we have disconnected from our innate intelligence and we override these impulses.
mm,
Don't yawn. I mean, that was me till like a week ago, right? So I'm just saying, like, why would I go against in yoga, they say, oh, if you have to burp, burp. If you have to break wind, break wind. Why would we override
mm.
yawning? It's contagious. Everyone will yawn and stretch. That's a
Yeah.
great thing. So, really being more in touch with ourselves instead of trying to shape our body into some kind of fixed ideal.
Mm,
And when we're connected to ourselves, we're going to be connected to our environment. We're going to start to see the beauty in our environment and how we can take coarse and raw things and make them acts of beauty and love. We all know love is in the details and yoga is in the details. So how can we be of sacred usefulness, and beauty and art are vital to creation, to our experience of creation. So it's like anything, we start understanding something, we understand a little piece and part of it, and as we go deeper into the experience of it, this awakening, um we realize, wow, I know so much more. And I know that there's so much more I don't understand. This is amazing. I think that when we get into a place where it's like, oh, I got to practice every day. I mean, honestly, there's good parts to that. But when it becomes overly formalized, it becomes obligatory. And then if we do too much, which we're likely to do, it becomes a burden.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's so beautiful in the Kaivalyapada, which, hey, folks, we're going to be opening that again at the end of summer. And this is like amazing. It's life changing, that pada. And there's a sutra. I mean, Patanjali does this throughout the sutra. He's like, it's not about the teachings, it's not about the practices. But once you wake up to that, you realize yoga is connection. Everything's connected to everything. I'm connected with myself. Um, oh my God, I heard the funniest line the other day, and it has to do, it's about marriage, but I could see it with ourselves too, which is like we marry the parts that we love the most in another person and hope we can tolerate the other parts.
Ain't that true?
But we have to come into acceptance for ourselves,
Yeah.
and work with what we've got. And yeah, in that
Mm.
way, it's um it's less formal than we think. And by the way, we like to say, hey, you need to come to class and you need to practice every day. In some ways, that's like, you know, keeping that whole system going. Um, yeah. So I think that like it's really it just sounds so banal because it's been said so many times, but there's truth in it, and that's why it's been said so many times. It's really about a presence, and like a different it's like Desikachar, he translates Patanjali, what you see doesn't change but the seer changes.
Mm.
And that you know you take on your own relationship to yourself. A lot of people don't do that. They give up that power. So it just becomes really rich.
It's so rich and it's exciting for me. I mean, even when I came to your class almost 16 years ago now. Wowie. And no, it was not that long. It's 2015. 10 years. Okay, yeah, 10 years, 11 years. It found me at a time where I was like just coming off this like really rigorous path and just kind of brainwashing myself into this, really rigid way of doing spirituality and it was a softening even then. And I feel like this this expanded awareness that you're teaching from and that you're gaining through your biotensegrity series and through the um, structural integration picked me up at a time where I also needed something different because after I gave birth, I was like, these postures don't work for me. I don't even want to do them. Like, one, I can't do them. Forget lunges, forget downward facing dog. I was like, I'm laying on the floor, you know. But it's so exciting to me because, you know, like I say it often, but if my teacher doesn't continue to grow and learn, it's like what am I going to get as a student? And so it's really exciting that you're finding these avenues and pathways to continue your studies and it's just feeding me in a different way. So I'm like getting chicken skin. I'm like lost my train of questioning. This is just it's great. It's really, really beautiful to watch, but exciting to be in the mix.
I'm Thank you for that, by the way. I appreciate that because not everybody feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And
because we have to come to class because we want it, not because we should.
yeah, absolutely. And then if the teacher does a good job, like you're going to want to do it on your own. And it's again, it doesn't have to be formalized. It just starts to become an awareness, because um, you can't fake good movement. That's kind of what is happening a lot on the yoga mat. All right, I'm just going to like be a heretic here. People are faking good movement, but in life, they're not pulling it off. And movement again is, here's the thing with yoga is it tends to be in a couple of planes. It tends to be about lines and geometry, and we're not that. Patanjali, the whole nomenclature that he uses, it's about dilation and layers and spherical. I mean, we just learned in the Vibhutipada, second to last sutra, the highest siddhi, extraordinary power, is to get out of linear thinking, even with time. So how do we even stack movements? Now that might be interesting as I'm talking about it. I'm not, all these postures are great, but the thing is, when you become limited to um, especially practicing certain postures over and over again with this kind of like didactic, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, is you start to create repetitive strain and stress on the body that starts to break it down. So when we start feeling ourselves as, organic, when we get out of this nonlinear thinking, what happens is we end up having this spontaneous insight, and we're tapping into the self-organizing intelligence within us, which is who we are. And then it starts to take us on this adventure. And it's really about like, what is enlightenment? It's about opening new pathways. So that being said, that's where it's like great to not be in a class because um, you know, you're not looking through the lens of the teacher. The teacher's held space, but then you can go and develop your own lens and your own svabhava, like what feels right to me, and what about this creativity. Um, it becomes a really different kind of a thing. And then when we're moving in life, if we have that curiosity instead of I'm doing it right or wrong, which is the dvadvas, now you're stuck, you're assaulted by the poles of opposites. Is this worthy of praise? Is this, not good enough? When you start to go into like, does this feel constructive? Like sometimes you're like, oh, that's hard, but this feels important. Like I'm curious about this and I'm going to do less and I'm going to go slower and I'm just want to understand what's happening and instead of trying to make something happen. Um, that we actually start to move better and feel better instead of just like trying to fake it till we break it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It brings a whole new level to what you often say in terms of life will authenticate the practice. Like you can't fake movements in life, uh, for the long haul. I mean, you can fake it, but
I just had an idea
yeah.
and I don't know how to do this, but maybe you do, because a big part of what we're doing is also having recoil.
Mm.
So we're not, it's like where yoga's fixated about lengthening, lengthening, lengthening. It's actually recoil is a really important part of that, because that's where piezoelectric current gets charged up in our body and stored. Okay, so that we can spring and we can bounce and shift directions, etc. We can pivot. So I was like, oh wow, like contact improv. Remember contact
Yeah.
improv?
Oh my
What
God, yes.
if Shanae, you did like a contact improv? I mean, I don't fucking know how to do that,
I,
but
oh
like,
my God. And it's so exciting because hello, students, if you're listening. This is my sneaky working up to it. I'm totally working up to like teaching a dance class, like in
yeah,
yoga, like, but contact is amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. Like, yes, like any form, it has its downfalls, but in terms of, because you don't need another person, but like we used to go out in college, we'd take dance classes, and our teacher would have us go out and do contact improvisation with a tree or a rock or the floor, or the ground. And it's profound, like any kind of, fasting experience or nature experience. Oh my God, that's so exciting.
I
Uh,
hadn't even thought about doing it with like a tree or a rock. I was
yeah.
thinking about other students, which would make it more complicated. That might be, but like whenever I did partner yoga, it was like you were either leaning into each other
Yeah.
or pulling on each other. What if you were bouncing off of each other?
We
And
did that too.
I mean,
So cool.
Rama used to have us. I mean, one time she had us finish or during a workshop where we would sit back to back with each other and just feel into each other's breath. And then there would be this kind of synchronicity. It was very subtle, but
Mm.
you weren't leaning on each other necessarily. I mean, anyway, that seems like a whole potential to
I hope so. I hope so.
a new lens for the next 100 years.
I hope so. It's just it's so cool because it's really opening my way of thinking of like, oh, well, what am I doing? It's like I started, writing this whole piece on, what is yoga? Like, is doing the dishes, is holding a baby, is dancing, like, why is that yoga? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no.
You
Yeah.
do know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
You
right.
know. When you're holding that baby,
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a deep knowing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. It's like being able to trust your own instincts.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because, that sense of like, what is a pre-movement? What is a pattern? What is a concept?
Mm.
And what is an instinct?
Mm.
So that's a whole adventure on its own. But you've done this long enough, and I think many of us, I mean, we actually came in like in the human animal, it's in there. So being able to tune into that is really important. Yeah. um yeah, yoga is just so much bigger than on the mat. And it's interesting because like for me, I got turned on to yoga, yes, on the mat, but then it was like the Bhagavad Gita at 17, and my whole um understanding shifted actually out of linear experience. I mean, that was a big thing. And understanding the nature of karma and cause and effect, and getting nomenclature for things that I had a deep sense for, but that hadn't been given to me. Um, and then it was like, then I really needed to get into asana because of that car accident where I had a lot of pain in my body. But
Mm.
um, so it's like it was always there. And I feel really blessed to have had that kind of a foundation. And back then, like you couldn't in the 70s, which isn't that long ago, people, um, you couldn't go to a yoga class without it being about consciousness,
Mhm.
about awareness, about, hey,
Right.
there's something bigger than you that you're a part of. And to have that sense of healthy reverence
Mm.
where you actually see this force as an ally and as
Mm.
benevolent. I mean, that's really, as Ray would say, this is the a priori understanding. This is the like basis of the whole thing, is that life is here to grow you,
Mm.
that it's going to push you in different ways, but it's always the hand of grace that has your back. So that's a shift in itself, out of coming out of like, oh my God, like what's trying to, I will eat and I will be eaten. What's going to eat me next? So it's like a different shift where you realize like, oh no, this is reciprocity. And it's not about survival of the fittest. It's about cohabitation, and yes, you will be eaten, and knowing that, and really appreciating what you're eating and how you're going to be eaten as well.
Ah, well said. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to talk about um, fear, anxiety, and stress. I want to just acknowledge there's a lot going on in the world right now. I personally don't have the capacity to get the news directly, but I hear it, it comes in. And I'm wondering if you have anything from the teachings of Patanjali or your teachers, Ramajyoti Vernon or Baba Hari Das or Patabi Joyce, and give us
Anybody?
anybody, anybody call on them, call on your guides, like get us out of this shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, the sutra for the klesha of abhinivesha, and it's so there's five klesha, or there's five frictions that keep the wheel of creation rotating. So you're always going to have contact with them, no matter how together your chit is. These things are going to come up because it's a parinama, the force of evolution, which is described as compressive. And when things squeeze and then they release, there's that rebound again. There's that recoil, and there's a juicing of the system in which you're ready to move in new directions, which is really important, as we spoke about. So abhinivesha literally means clinging to life as we know it, and it intimates fear of the unknown and resistance to transformation. And it's the thickest veil of all. I mean, we're hardwired in our brains and our bodies to be always, on the alert. But the thing is that really in our immediate surroundings, we're pretty safe. Most people have temperature controlled environments, etc., gated, locks on their doors, etc. That being said, we also need to honor the fact that, whoa, what is happening in the world right now? And a couple of sutra ago, in the Vibhuti Pada, Patanjali speaks about change, or time, eternity as being in flux, and that is a constancy in itself. And this is again one of those things that we've heard a million times, but man, with that sutra unpacking, it landed so profoundly. Everything's changing. Everything is changing all of the time. So if we could, we might be like, oh my God, we're going back into neo-fascism, not fascism, fascism. I'm a neo-fascist, myofascist. I got to be careful what I say here. But things are not actually repeating. Things can't repeat. They might be patterns, but it's a different iteration of it. And Jerry in the class, she's amazing. She was like, it makes you wonder how thin the walls have to get
Mm.
until like the outside pressure, like we speak about hypertonic and hypotonic. And I don't remember much about this from biology, but it has to do with the pressure inside and outside of the cell.
Mm.
And tonic or homeostasis would be where there's equalized pressure. So sometimes the pressure is on the outside, sometimes the pressure is on the inside, and then it forces a shift in the system and the structure, which is really a structure of adaptability. That's what it is. So Ramajati, quoting from the sutras, would say, we're not afraid of anything we haven't experienced before.
Mm.
As I say that, that's landing for me in a different way. And the truth is, the truth is maybe there's repeating themes, but things are way more complex than we notice. So last week's sutra speaks about how our brains are designed to see continuities, which is a great gift. But often what we'll do is there's kshana, which are like an anu is the smallest increment of matter. A kshana is the smallest increment of time. Do you remember how long it is?
No.
A quarter of a twinkle of an eye. You knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great. It's so great. Which, by the way, is how you can tell a turned on practitioner, the twinkle. So there it is. And what makes two little kshanas, like it happens so quick and so brief, we usually don't notice it or see it. So our brain will construe and chain them together and then create these themes, which then we deposit our feelings, our sensations, our affects, and our emotions in a story.
Mm.
But here it goes back to proprioception. If if you're really in tune, the temperature is a little different, the air is a little different, everything's changing all the time. And we'll start to notice that between these little teeny kshanas, which are so brief, there's what makes them separate, these little snippets of time, is another kshana, which is just space and potential.
Mm.
So I don't know about you, but like my big fears are of re-injuring myself or getting in a situation that I've been in before that was untenable, right? And so when we can again go like, wait a minute, everything's actually already changing. I don't have to make it change. Um, and this is a benevolent force. And sometimes the walls have to get thin, and sometimes there could be a collapse when something's emerging. We know the make an omelet, break some eggs. Um, we again can lean into that a priori understanding that like creator and creatrix are not punishing.
Mm.
They're not punishing, they're loving. And we are the object of their meditation. Just think about the feel into the love that you have for your family, for your child, for your chosen family. Um, it's a real place of care. So Rama used to say, fear blocks grace. So when we feel that fear, we can be like, okay, wait a minute, I must be anticipating something that happened before. But
Mm.
underneath that fear, if you can hold it with tenderness, fear is a layer just adjacent to our primal instinct. Primal instinct, we tend to think of fear as a bad thing. What if fear is a good thing? What if fear is your friend, where it stops you for a moment and you feel into that little space, that little kshana between the chain of the stories where you deposit your emotions, your feelings, your saga, and you feel into that moment and you can relax into it and trust and feel this self-organizing intelligence within you and be like, okay, this is something that, like, everything that I've done, maybe it's now a choreography. Maybe it's a pattern of preference that I've leaned into so much, and maybe it's suboptimal. And maybe I could interrupt that pattern and see what emerges.
Mm. That's profound.
I know. What kind of bumper sticker can we make? Fear rocks.
Yeah. I mean, to really,
Fuck.
wow, shit. But I get that, I really get that. I really feel that there's something available. I was just reading this quote from um, Rainer Maria Rilke in his book Letters to a Young Poet, and he talks about doubt and letting your doubt actually be a good thing and let it lead you someplace and to follow your doubt rather than it always destroying things like get get curious. I'm paraphrasing. But I feel something really similar with what you said about fear or anxiety or any of those emotions that I would rather not feel.
You know, I love that you said that. And of course, we know the nine rites of passage. Vyadisyana, samshaya pramana, lasya virati pranti darshana, lata bhumikatvanavasti tatvani chitta vikshepatentaraya. Samshaya, doubt, means knowledge touching both ends.
Mm.
And Patanjali says, don't be afraid of doubt. Learn to think for yourself, learn to feel for yourself. And over through the sutras, he is, just like appealing to to our innate intelligence. Like, please don't take this on as canonical teachings. These are not laws. Get curious, trust your instincts, learn to develop your instincts because they become masked under all that other BS belief systems. Reconnect, learn to tune into yourself because, if you really are living yoga as a living science and art, it's going to be more eclectic. It's going to be more innovative. And he speaks about like how there's the Pashu, the herd. Where does the herd go? And when do they leave? And then there's the Sanya Bhashya, which is the twilight speech, which is where people can see like where, here the limelight and
Mm.
then the shadows when things kind of clear out, like being able to see beyond the hype and to really tune into the mystery behind it. I don't know that I'm saying it very well, but so doubt is a really fertile place to be.
Mm.
But doubt can also be undermining. And I think, we had that realization a few years ago in our sutra experience that you can't make a wrong decision. Maybe you could have made a better decision, but you can't make a wrong decision. So when you when you have again that a priori understanding that things are always going to turn out for the good
Mm.
in the end. I mean, there will be sacrifice, but there will also be unexpected gifts.
Mm.
Like we were talking about how much we yearned for our sons and the years. And then in retrospect, you go, oh, I see. I was getting primed. I was really getting primed for this. And it's beautiful, but it's hard when you're in the moment sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. When he wants to try on 4 different hoodies before we walk out the door, I'm like, it's not about the hoodie. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really great to be able to stay like, stay with those kind of heavy, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's uncomfortable, doubt or fear or anxiety, but to stay close to those and it just reminds me, I've just been thinking a lot lately about how so much just like physical injury, but also, injury that we do to each other, psychologically could be alleviated if we just slow down. I'll speak for myself. If I slow down and if I
And
just,
that's it.
yeah, yeah, and feel. Yeah.
Yeah. And being able and feel, meaning not necessarily, I mean, there's the emotional aspect as well, but also just the sensation. And that when we go to sensation, it's going to bring us right where we are, right where we need to be. I tell you, I kind of had a understanding the other day. I mean, my husband is, definitely a yogi through and through. He is Seva. We've been building this house. It's been almost, well, pushing on 2 years. And there's been mistakes and there's been things that happen. And of course they do. And, if I'm like, oh, if I talk about it, a lot of times he'll say, I'm just focused on what the next thing is that I need to do. And
Mm.
literally, there's an economy in that because it's too late for that. So
Yeah.
we're already in the solution phase.
Yeah.
And then in that solution phase, like there's still a million things to do, but like literally all you can do, what's the most important thing to do to help the situation you're in? When is the most important time? Right now. You know, who's the most important one? The one you're with. So it really brings us into that place. And a lot of time is really, we um, spend a lot of time just kind of ruminating over the past. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. But that's where, there's so many sutra on this on the memory field and being able to purify the memory field. And
Mm.
again, it's like, um, is this useful? Is this not useful? And then watch how the brain wants to answer. And then the brain will always build a case and then refute its own case. So you have to go to your body, you know, gut brain, heart brain, and there should be logic behind it. But a lot of times we just get lost in the thinking, and that's where we start that's where memories carry a lot of weight, and things that have long passed can still really burden us and actually create a lot of fear. But the good news is things aren't repeating because you're changing. Even if you're like in a situation, let's say like you're in a um, domestic violence situation.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh my God, the fear, the eggshells, the hyper, um, what's the word? Vigilance, the hyper vigilance, what's going on? Like all the time, you're getting primed to like you're shifting, the pressure is building, and like getting the courage to get out of that situation or get the help that you need. Like, trust that you're changing, that you're not the same. It's not the same situation because you're not the same. And even the fact that you're thinking about it. Actually, this week's sutra that I'm putting in my newsletter, let me think about it. Oh my gosh. It's kind of evading me right now, but it says you cannot know both. You cannot know your mind and your soul.
Mm,
That's deep.
mm,
If you're thinking, you're not in touch with your soul.
mm,
That doesn't mean thinking it isn't important, but you have to kind of like reflect it back in, take it in. Eka Samaire Chayobayanam, I think is the sutra.
mm,
Uh, yeah, in the fourth pada. So the mind's great up to a point. Tune in. When there's fear, be like, oh, what's that? Fear is both coming from like, here's an opportunity for transformation. And also, I don't want to go back. I don't want
mm,
to regress. So, this is my friend. This is something to pay attention to. There's something really vital here. What's my primal instinct?
mm,
And then that's layers to explore. Sometimes you do need to get away just so you can feel yourself again.
mhm.
Sometimes you do need to shut down or pendiculate or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But don't doubt yourself,
Yeah.
which sounds easy, but it rarely leads to any good. It's like punishing behaviors don't lead to anywhere good.
Mm,
So, why would we do that to ourselves?
mm,
And being able to see that, it doesn't mean that you don't have regret, like healthy regret or being contrite, but don't like self sabotage, and no, you're not going to do it right. You're not going to do it wrong, but you're going to do it your own way because who knows your soul better than you?
mm.
You do.
Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you. And if our listeners have questions for you, and you can always reach out to Bhavani and I and ask your questions. And if not, then you'll rely on me to come up.
Cut
Um,
some slack, Jack.
and
We love your
I'm
questions when you send them in.
thank
And,
you.
if there's something in this podcast that touched you, you probably have a friend who would benefit from this. So this is part of, just sharing these reflections, giving yourself to permission. And I would say one of my biggest takeaways in the last year and a half or whatever is to not pathologize your pain and your fear. It's part of being human and it's part of your own growing and discovery
Mm.
process.
Anything you'd like to close with? I want to say, what it brings up for me is the importance of, like you often say, the holy pause, the importance of the holy pause, slowing down, and then really, you know, becoming aware of sensation in the body, like the body practices. Because often when I get afraid, it's all about, okay, just breathing into the pelvic diaphragm. And that's all I can do in the moment. And it doesn't necessarily take away the fear or, but something shifts. Um, so thank you for that.
Yeah. And it's like when we avoid the sensation or the emotion, we become it
Yeah.
instead of it being really the way that our soul is speaking and revealing. So if you can be your own ally, you know? Yeah.
Thank you. Until next time.
Thank you, Shanae. Aloha.
Bye.